Please say that again.
Mm-hmm.
Say
When
louder
boundaries
for the
have
people
been
at the back.
crossed, it's a lot harder and it's a lot messier when you need to either think clearly about that relationship or you need to now go your separate ways.
And when you say boundary, can you just be upfront?
If you have been having the sexes,
yes.
let me say that. The sexes.
So yes, if you've crossed the sexual boundary and you've
Exactly.
already been intimate with that person, it's much more harder to leave that
relationship because you have now gotten connected in a way that is a lot harder to separate, because it can be like, okay, if we just have a handshake, it's easier to separate from the handshake. But now if our whole bodies are intertwined, and it's not just the body, it's the soul, it's the, the spirit and all of those things, then taking apart one part from the other is a lot harder.
Hello and welcome back to the 360 Perspective podcast with me, Trisha. No one ever gets married with the thought that one day they will wake up to see their marriage taking a different turn. And that is the story of our guest today, especially when you believe that you've done everything right. And so today, it's a face that you've seen here before on the podcast, but today we get to have a candid conversation as she unpacks what that journey looked like and the lessons that she learned from her previous marriage. So ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Angie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Karibu sana. We have missed you here on the podcast.
Oh, but I have been plugging in. So
yes.
I haven't been far. I've been plugging in, listening to the conversations. They've been awesome as always. I'm just so honored that I keep getting invited back. Such a joy every single time.
Karibu sana. It's good to see you and to have you here. I don't know what's been happening in your life. Sijui kama uko na life updates, highs, lowlights, everything in between.
The life update is that I am alive. That is the life update. My goodness, the year has just, it's just been a lot. Like when you feel like you've lived several years in a year, or even
and you're not even media yet.
Imagine. But you know what? I am grateful to be alive, to have not lost my mind, to have been able, just to be able to wake up every day and just be like, okay, it's another day, another opportunity to start again, to be able to encourage other people, to be able to show up in the ways I needed to show up. Sometimes to just sleep in. And just be like, you know what? I just don't have the grace and energy to interact with people. Today I'm just going to rest. There have been those days, but I thank God that there have been more days with sunshine and joy and life.
And we bless God. You definitely are such a blessing. And we are grateful for your life.
Thank you. How are you doing?
I am well.
The girl with the glow and the ring. The ring and the glow.
Gosh,
Onyesha audience kidogo.
Actually, I said I was going to do an episode on just like what that journey was. So I still owe you guys. I haven't forgotten, but I owe you guys on just what that journey looked like from singlehood. Next, inshallah, you're married. Next, there's a whole big transition coming up. And not pregnancy, guys. But there's another...
but it's good things.
There's good stuff, and we bless God. Definitely, I think through the different seasons, God remains to be God, and we bless God for the good, the bad, the in-betweens. He still remains to be God.
Amen.
Yeah, and so today's conversation is a hot one.
It's a juicy one. It's juicy.
It's a juicy one, and you shared a bit. I feel like you unpacked a bit on the very first episode that we did with you, but today I just felt led because I have a lot of people asking me these questions about marriage, and I'm like, guys, I'm still a newbie, I'm still a baby, I'm still an infant.
I just arrived.
I just arrived, guys. Maybe sina content yet, but I have people who have, content, who've lived their life, who've, made some mistakes here and there, learned from their mistakes, and have a lot of wisdom to share with us, from the journey that you've been through. And so it's so good to have you. And let's dive right into it.
Right.
So you give us a little bit of it. So now I'd love for you to just unpack for us, like, your life from, singlehood, dating, into marriage, into now where you are, what that journey has been.
Well, okay. So I think if anybody has not watched, especially the first episode, yeah, we'll tag it somewhere. We'll put it somewhere in the screen.
Yes.
But it's really important. Just go in and just be able to get some of that. But I remember in that first episode, just sharing my journey, like even into salvation, and with my background in terms of growing up in a Christian household, but then sort of being out, like until I made the actual decision at 20 to now become a Christian. But part of what that looked like before I committed to following Christ fully was a lot of dating. I think I was a serial dater with regards to just, Ati, this one is over. Before the day is done, we are already moving on to another relationship. I think, of course, looking back and growing and maturing and stuff, is realizing, of course, there were issues, brokenness in our own family, my relationship with my dad just being complicated. And so in trying to find that sort of like affirmation and that connection, and of course, my mom is there and she's loving and everything, but she's female. And so I think that sort of informed a lot of my dating patterns. And so I think I would have termed myself as a serial dater.
And I think it's very important to pause there, and the fact that you got to pause and reflect and realize the reason why, because I think a lot of women don't know the reason as to why they hope from one relationship to another.
Exactly.
But then when you sit keenly and you reflect, you realize either your dad being absent, or him
Emotionally
being passive.
unavailable.
Yes, emotionally
emotionally unavailable. Exactly.
Yes. So it could be present but emotionally unavailable. And so psychologically you realize it affects some of the behaviors that you put yourself into. So I think it's very important to I think as ladies, just taking time to pause and reflect and ask yourself, why am I seeing these patterns in my life?
Yeah. Why am I dating
Especially
people who look the same? They're different names, gender, not gender. Oh, not gender.
Not
different
gender.
names. Take that back.
Yeah.
Different names, different tribes, different build and everything. You meet them in different spaces.
Yes.
But at the core, it's the same exact person. It's the same kind of like a shell of the person. Like it's just
the same character.
Exactly same character. It's just in there. And if it ends up in abuse, it's happened like four different times. And you're like,
you attract the same
why am I
type
attracting
of
the
people?
same kind of person? Is there something in me that is looking for this affirmation, or I need some sort of aggression? And it's weird because the mind works in a very strange way, because there might be some aggression that you had seen in your childhood and attach that to, okay, if my dad is there and he's aggressive, that means at least he's present and he loves me. And so you keep looking for men who love you, quote unquote, but are aggressive towards you. And and you don't realize it until you sit down with yourself and be like, okay, what is it in my childhood, in my relationships with my parents, my mom, my dad, that make me more inclined towards certain relationships? Is there probably a way that I'm viewing love that is unhealthy, that is wrong? Because sometimes I remember my mom sharing, I think it was 2019, she was at a salon on Kiambu Road, and her hair was being done, but the lady who was in the next seat was going to get married that coming weekend. So the person doing her hair was telling her, na ujue kama usipochapwa uwe hakupendi. Translation, gosh, if your husband doesn't beat you, he doesn't love you. And then I remember my mom like sitting through it for a while. Then eventually she was like, excuse me.
Yes.
To explain to them.
That's not normal or healthy.
But even as she explained to them, she could see that it was not like seeping in. Like they were not understanding. They were just like, look at this modern woman. She doesn't know anything about it. But imagine there are people who believe that. And so there can be very unhealthy ways that we have sort of grown up with and formulated entire worldviews and paradigms that are so wrong, that have us in terrible places, and repeating cycles and going through things, enduring things that God did not have in mind for us.
And so, I need to bring your mom on this podcast because she has wealth of. I've sat down with her before I met you, and never forgotten what she shared with me.
I mean, like sometimes it's just like wait. Just
you almost want to take notes.
Wait. And with such ease and grace. But yeah, I think it's very important. I think we should regularly do it. I think in like HR space, I usually tell people that like every quarter, sit down with yourself, have some reflective time, like in terms of your career, how work is going, how these things are going. But I think it's more than just with our career, we should regularly have meetings with ourselves. In the first quarter of this year, I have been in a relationship with this guy. What are the things that are going well? What are the things that I'm uncomfortable about? Am I uncomfortable because of something he's doing, or what's it's triggering in me? Or is this, I mean, whatever it is, I think in our time, our generation, we don't sit quietly by ourselves to reflect enough. But it's a practice I think we should do. So yes, so I was a serial dater. And then I got born again. And I think at the point when I got born again, it was after I'd had my son, and I was now plugged into church, and I was just like, I just want to be me and Jesus, not necessarily because I'd consciously said I'm not dating, but because the guy I was dating before was not born again. And so now that I have transitioned, I'm just like, okay, I don't want that distraction, because I know it's a huge part of my life. So I'm plugged into church and stuff. And I think maybe about 6-7 months I start seeing this guy, and we're in the same Bible study, and we are we get along really well, where we live close to each other, and so we spend quite a bit of time together. But again, even looking back now, the only difference was now he was born again, but still the things that I was accepting, I think, in the relationship, in terms of this person was emotionally available, but a very passive person. Not the kind of person to take initiative, not the kind of person to have a plan even for their own lives, and to, just like big talking, empty vision, just big talk. Which, of course, all of these things, unfortunately, I realized in retrospect. In the moment, I was just like, the moments I would feel like, okay, yeah, but there's no, like, so much, there's no depth, there's no, like, we're not really, like, I'm not feeling inspired by this person. I'm not feeling like I could
Hakuna substance.
Like, yeah, church things were there and fun things were there, but there's no, where's the thing that is supposed to spark in me some sort of, like, we're going towards something. And so that relationship didn't last too long. Because also I traveled for school, out of the country for school and things like that. Then with the distance, now I had time to reflect and just be like, no, but I'm not, this is not making me happy.
Yeah.
And so
I think it's important to also pause there and just take note of the fact that a lot of times for women, we are pushed to, this guy is just a believer.
Yeah.
But a believer is not it. It's not
that's like entry stage.
Yeah. There has to be other things contributing to a workable relationship that would ideally lead to marriage. So being born again, it's great and it's awesome and it's very, very important, but it's not it.
Yeah.
You have to look at other things that really make who that person is. Are they driven? Do they have not just a vision, but how they contributing towards, being a better person, how they're working towards their goals, so there has to be proactiveness in their lives. So you can't just say, oh, this person is a believer, so yay, let's get married.
Exactly. Because even if when you think about our own selves, because sometimes it's like we are blinded somehow when we're looking at somebody else, and that rose colored glasses, we just look at them like, oh my God, they're born again, now we can get married tomorrow. It's fantastic. But no, because even you yourself, from the moment you got born again, there's still so many things inside yourself that you're working on. In terms of if you're a person who was struggling with anger issues today, you get born again today, it's not automatic that tomorrow you're just going to be the most calm person. There are things you're working on, and in the same way you are working on things, can you see in that other person them working on themselves? Are they partnering with God to be able to be transformed in their character, be transformed in the way they are pursuing purpose and career and all those different things? So if you can't see somebody growing,
yes,
I think that
on
that
a
is
growth
the thing.
curve,
On a growth curve,
yes,
I think it's a red flag.
Yes.
It's somebody has settled, and you will be the one agitated. You'll keep wanting to do things, and eventually it will become an issue of, a conflict issue. And so that relationship ended, but it ended well. I mean, it was sort of, amicable and still remained friends and things like that. And thankfully, boundaries hadn't been crossed. I think it's a lot harder when boundaries have been...
Please say that again. Say
when
it louder for the
have
people
been
at the back.
crossed, it's a lot harder and it's a lot messier when you need to either think clearly about that relationship, or you need to now go your separate ways.
And when you say boundary, can you just be upfront?
If you have been having the sexes,
yes,
let me say that. The sexes.
So yes, if you've crossed the sexual boundary and you've already been intimate with that person, it's much more harder to leave that relationship.
Because you have now gotten connected in a way that is a lot harder to separate, because it can be like, okay, if we just have a handshake, it's easier to separate from the handshake.
easy.
But now if our whole bodies are
souls,
intertwined,
your
and
mind.
it's not just the body, it's the soul, it's the, the spirit and all of those things, then taking apart one part from the other is a lot harder. So that ended. Now I'm in campus, and that's where I meet my husband, the man who eventually became my husband. I met him in first year, and it was so romantic. It's one of those things we said. It's sort of like the movies, because I was in South Africa. He passed away.
So sorry.
3 months ago.
Yeah,
and that's part of lifing. He passed away 3 months ago, but so he's Zimbabwean, but he was also studying in South Africa, and so he was at different university and stuff like that. So when we had come as international students, so my university was Australian but had a campus in SA, but they had told us don't go inside like the CBD of Joburg because it's dangerous and blah blah blah. But now after we had stayed a couple of months, one of my friends said, no, let's just go into CBD. In the same way, if you go into town here in Nairobi, you can get like steals of like clothes and stuff. So I went with a bunch of my friends one Saturday. So we go in and we spend the whole day shopping. Now when we come back, we're taking a matatu back just to campus, which is maybe like an hour away. My 3 friends sit at the back seat of the matatu. I sit in front of them because I'm like, I just don't want us to squeeze. We've been sweating and whatever. Then this gentleman comes and sits right next to me. I don't even notice him. I don't even look up at him or anything. I'm just there. I don't even think I had my phone because we were told, be careful. So I'm just looking down to buying. And then the matatu takes off, the taxi takes off. And I look over and I see he's reading a book. The book is Right People, Right Place, Right Plan.
What a way to be attracted.
Lord, I mean, because I was like, yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm like, look at this man. He's reading.
He must be intelligent.
Yes. And then it's by Reverend, what's his name? Jensen Franklin. Right People, Right Place, Right Plan. So I'm like, first and foremost, I'm intrigued because it's a Christian book. And then the title, I'm like, oh, can I see the book? So he gives it to me. I'm still not looking at him. I read it, I look through it. So then I ask him, oh, so what church do you go to? Because I'm like, obviously, somebody's not going to just pick this.
Yeah, randomly.
So I don't know what church he tells me he goes to. I was like, okay. I mean, because I don't really know Joburg anyway that much. So I said, are you a Christian? He says, yeah. Then we start talking from there. And eventually he jumps off before us and he asks for my number. I'm not the kind of person who gives my number because I'm like, please, I'm not going to be on your clock. You give me your number, I will probably lose it. But I just wanted to be awkward. But that day I don't have my phone, I don't have a pen or anything. He's the one with the book and stuff. So he writes my number at the back of the book. So he jumps out and then a couple of days later he calls. There was nothing like spectacular about like that interaction, except now that book and just how it just seemed so like ordained. It just seemed so like, wow, this is the story for the movies. So he calls a couple of days later and I act like I don't know who it is, but I remember his voice because his voice was just so like...
No. Trust me, as ladies, we are always waiting for that call.
Exactly.
So by the time it's coming in, you're like, if it's not this one, Lord.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, and he had like a really, really awesome voice. So he calls and he's like, this is so-and-so. I'm like, who? That time I am like,
yes, oh, Lord.
Keep me together.
Goosebumps.
So anyway, we talk. Eventually I think he invites me for lunch at his house. I was like, was I born yesterday? Am I mad? I tell one of my friends, we're going for lunch, by the way. So I tell him I'm coming with my friend. So we go, he cooks us lunch. It was fantastic at his sister's house. We have lunch, we leave. Then I think, so we just continue just like hanging out. And one time, I think it was a few months later, I think it was around the time for World Cup, I'm in SA. And so I go to Durban to visit my cousin. And so I'm there for most of the holiday. On the morning that I'm coming back by bus. I get to the bus station. The man has been on a bus the whole night.
Wow.
To arrive in the morning so that he can ride the bus back with me.
Wow.
Okay, I mean...
commitment.
I was like, okay.
Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly. This is so romantic. This is somebody with grand gestures. This is somebody who's not just talking about things. He's doing it. And it's already previously it was people passive. This one is somebody showing. He's demonstrating that, he just... That's the point where now I was like... weakest. I was like, okay, this is okay, but I still did. So on that trip, he said, okay, so will you be my girlfriend? I was like, let me think about it. But eventually,
your effort is equal to your booty.
Exactly.
It can't go to waste like that.
Yeah. And no, wait, but no, sorry, he didn't ask me then. Before I went on holiday, he asked me. But at that point, I told him I can't say yes because I have a son. Because we hadn't yet talked about my son. So I said, I can't say yes, I have a son back home and da-da-da. Then he paused and he said, okay, take as much time as you want, think about it. I was like, oh.
So he wasn't intimidated by the fact that you had a son?
He just paused and he was like, I think he sort of like took in like, okay, so there is a lot more that you need to take into consideration before you say yes to me. And so take as much time. So I was like, okay. And then now the next grand gesture was this: when I was coming back from Durban, he asked me again. And I said, I'm still thinking about it. But over, I think that weekend that came up, I eventually said yes. And that's how we started dating. And our dating was interesting. Whereas he was a Christian, it was a Christian religion based, not Christian, born again Christian, because his background was Catholic. And so in terms of understanding, and I've been Pentecostal my whole life, so I understood these things of salvation from an early age, and I mean just the teaching in church and all of that. And now I am growing in my faith. But then at some point you realize that, oh, actually he's not like born again. I mean, he's passionate, he loves the Lord and everything, but in terms of making a personal decision for Christ, he hasn't made that decision. But at this point, I'm so in love with the man, So my mom, I'm telling my mom I'm dating this guy. She's like, is he born again? That's her first question. Is he born again? I'm like, yeah, we go to church together. She's like, yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you, when a lady can't be upfront and just tell you yes or no.
Question.
It's always a yes. Don't start man. He listens to worship music. His car, his house is always he's playing
gospel music. In fact, he's the one who reminds us to go to church.
It's just a yes or no answer.
It's a yes or no question. Exactly. I remember a couple of years ago, my sister introduced us to this guy, and the first thing, because I've become that person. Yeah. So I asked him, because he says something like he loves my content, he loves how I'm always doing like Bible studies and what. So I said, oh, so are you born again? Then he says, I'm spiritual.
Kwisha maneno.
So I said, yeah, we are all spiritual as human beings because we have spirits. So we are all spiritual. We have the capacity to connect with God. He must have thought I was like the harshest person.
Definitely.
So I was like, yeah,
but
do you have a personal relationship with God? He says, mina God tunaelewana too. I turned to my sister a little bit later. I said, he's not the one.
Yeah, sadly.
Because if somebody has not made that decision, like they're not clear about where they are with God, automatically that's an issue.
And ideally that's just the starter pack.
And that's the starter pack, exactly.
So the starter pack is just, is he born again, yes or no?
Exactly.
If he
and
isn't,
then everything else builds from there.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't. And so my mom I was like, no, but he loves God. I mean, like,
he reads Christian books, written by Christian authors.
Exactly, Christian authors. In fact, that's how we met. I mean, right people, right place, right plan.
Yeah.
Up until today, interesting. I haven't read that book. I should go and look for it and read and just find out what's the content in that book. But when I think I was in second year, we started going to church together. And so I remember the distinct day when he did get born again. That day I was so excited. There was a presentation of the gospel and he was like, wow, I think it was even the verse that says, he made him, I think it's 2 Corinthians, he made him who knew no sin, to become sin so that we may become the righteousness of God. And he was like, I mean, for the first time, I think, like, when you watch somebody like come alive to something, and he was like, oh, that's what it means. He's like, I have never received that for myself. And so as that is going on, we're having a conversation. At the point when they do the altar call, he's the only one who goes up. And he has this engagement and, surrenders his life to Christ. And it was very genuine, because it had nothing, because I didn't personally, in as much push him at all, like, because it was this debate I'm having with my mom and with God, but with him, no. And so our relationship continues. He is also, we are sort of growing. We're growing in terms of.
So can I ask, would you advocate? Because inaitwangwa missionary dating.
I do not.
So I was gonna ask, because I'm pretty sure there's someone who's watching and is in the exact same scenario. They're born again, but whoever they are dating is actually can't upfrontly say
a pre-believer.
Yeah, spiritual and all those things that you have described, but then they're clinging on to. But Angie, but he got born again at some point.
No. The thing about it is, when you look at the principles God has put in place, they're the standard, they are the rule. every so often, God can be gracious in terms of there being an exception, but we can't build our lives around exceptions. So for example, you could be like, and we're talking about like drugs and substance abuse, for example, you can just be like, yeah, but this person drinks, and they're just okay. But just because somebody has turned out okay does not negate the fact that there's so many people on that path who die, who end up in addiction, who end up in prison, in situations that are so costly, like not just for eternity, but even for their lives here and now. And we can't use the exception to build our lives upon. And like, our lives are too precious for us to take that kind of chance. Like, God knows why he said, do not be unequally yoked. God does not hate unbelievers. He just knows that in terms of building for marriage, building for long-term covenant, walking together, Amos 3:3 says, can two walk together unless they are agreed? He knows how much harder a path you will walk because you're not aligned. And just because it has worked in one or two situations does not mean, like, God does not owe you your story being the exception. And so in that particular case, when my mom comes on, she'll tell you her own journey, her own story. And I mean, she's shared it publicly.
She's so profound.
She shared it publicly that she married an unbeliever. And it has cost her so many years of her life. It has had impact on her life, on us as her children, and generations. And you can trace it back to that one decision, you know. And so, I mean, I would definitely, I mean, that was just my story.
And I know one thing she told me, gosh, how many years later? I think 4 years, 5 years now. But she said, Trisha, if you think obedience is hard, try disobedience. Try disobedience. Exactly. And so I would definitely, missionary dating, that's not a thing. That's, yeah. In fact, yesterday I was speaking to a group of young ladies and told them missionary dating is out. Discipleship dating. So you're the one, the one where, like, yes, maybe you've not been dating, but now this person has gotten born again today. Now tomorrow you're like, okay, let's now get married. Yeah. The person still needs to grow. As a woman, yes, there can be dynamics where maybe you're more spiritually ahead, you know, more spiritually mature than your husband, but the husband is supposed to be the head. If they have not reached the place where they can discern the things of God, are passionate, are growing, have their own relationship with God apart from you, then they're not the person you're supposed to be in relationship with at that point in time. It could happen further down the line, but it's very easy for you to coming in as, oh, I want to disciple them and so that we can grow together. It will blur the lines. You can end up becoming either an idol to this person. Like, so instead of the person crying out to God, it's you they're crying out to. You're standing in the way of them being able to grow. Whether it is you at some point needing also to be poured into, you can't be poured into by the person who is still trying to figure out, how do I hear God's voice? How do I pray? How do I grow in my relationship with God? It's very selfish for you to decide that that's the point now you want them for yourself. Let them grow in God first. That's what I'm saying, discipleship dating. Give them time to figure out what their dynamic with God looks like first and develop their disciplines. And then they can be able to, you know, you can be able to journey together in terms of we're dating, we're engaged, we're getting married. I think that sometimes we just complicate. Human beings, we like to complicate things. Like, God has put it out there. So definitely, I would definitely not recommend missionary dating. Because I also think that in as much as, yes, he got born again and our relationship was growing, there are a lot of pitfalls that we fell into, and even a lot of, we can't have these kinds of conversations because we're not at the same level, or because part of being a Christian, Romans 12, being transformed by the renewal of our minds, right? There's so many things he has believed, so many ways he has seen the world, so many paradigms that he had before getting born again, that now he needed to be transformed or be changed. But me, I have been on this journey for a while. Exactly. So even aligning those things, I think that even the decision to eventually get married, and for us to, many decisions we made, we were not seeing things in the same way. And that ended up being very costly much later. So we date for, how many years is that? 5 years. 5 years.
And I'm also not one of those people who advocate for everlasting dating.
Yep.
But that one was just because we were in campus.
Yeah.
So we met when I was in first year. He was in second year or third year, second year. And so we needed to finish school.
Yeah, definitely.
That was the reason why we were there. So I finished my undergrad. I do my postgrad. And then eventually we have this conversation about marriage. Now, the thing is, when we're talking about salvation being the entry point and other things needing to develop around that, I was sort of clear about what I wanted to do. So I studied HR with a minor in tourism, and then for my postgrad, I did strategic management. At some point, when I think it was in my third year, I started working with the department. So I was a tutor. And so I was doing like academic support. Eventually I finished my undergrad. I joined the lecturing team as I'm doing my postgrad. So I'm lecturing and all of those different things. So I sort of see the trajectory of where I want my life to go, and I'm building my career. It was not the same on his end, because he was still trying to figure out sort of like what he actually wants to do. And those are the kinds of things which I'm just like, yeah, those were red flags. And looking back, those were the things I should have been paying attention to before I got married. Because the fact that he was still trying to figure out what he wants to do in terms of his purpose, in terms of his career, in terms of sort of I called out. There were things that even when I raised, it was like, no, but you're not being supportive, And so, but blinded by love, blinded by the fact that we've spent so much time
marriage
together.
Marriage is the
eye-opener. Everything, every way in which you have been seeing and clearly. When you are married, now it's like
eye-opener.
Exactly, and these bright lights and everything. And so, but we still continue to journey towards marriage and things like that. When we first started dating, I didn't want to get married. And I had already told him, I'm not for marriage. Hey, I don't want marriage. And he was like, it's fine. We'll be engaged forever then. And I didn't want marriage because I had seen so many failed marriages, so many pretend marriages, so many people miserable in marriage. And I was like, why would I want to willingly put myself in that? I was happy for people when they get married, but I was just like, that's not my portion. But the Lord healed my perspective. He was just like, yes, there are failures around, but that's not because I've lied about marriage. It's not because marriage doesn't work. It's just people are fallen and they're just doing things their own way. But marriage is my idea and it's a great thing. And so even before we came to a place of him asking me, will you marry me? I had already been healed by God in terms of appreciating that marriage is a good thing, and marriage is something that God invites us into, where it's a space where we are made more like Christ, sanctification too. We see him in a new and different way, in a better way. We're able to partner with him to show his goodness and his love to the world and demonstrate certain things, etc., etc. And so come 2014, I think towards the end of 2013, she had come to Kenya and spoken to my parents and my extended family, and they had said yes. 2014, we got married, and it was the most beautiful. Till today, I have never been to a more beautiful wedding than ours. Aww. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. It was an out-of-town wedding, a destination wedding. There were zebras that just appeared randomly in the wedding outside there. So our photo shoot has some zebras there, and it was nice. It was a small, intimate wedding. It was wonderful. Yeah, so that was good. I'm trying to face. I was like, so that was great. But I mean, there were a couple of like issues. I mean, like in terms of family tension and drama, not from my side, from his family side. But we were still powering through, because it's us against the world and stuff like that. But it was stuff that, but it was stuff that he was, that was already issues he was having with his family before I was even in the picture. And then now when I was in the picture. And so, yeah, it spilled over into our wedding, but it was still like, okay, it's still just there at the back. Me, I'm supporting my man. And exactly. So we start our married life and everything. My son comes and he joins us. So we're having this happy family and everything is going well. But these questions that hadn't been addressed beforehand, the issues about purpose and career and how my identity, in terms of his side, his identity and showing up in the world and all those different things, now they're showing up a lot more. There are,
they're becoming areas of tension.
becoming areas of tension, because now when you're living together and life is going on and stuff like that, every time there's an issue, it's like, me, I can clearly see the issue is here, but it's also like, no, it's because this hasn't been sorted and that been sorted. I'm like, yeah, but the real question is here. One of the things when I decided, I was like, God, okay, I'm going to do this marriage thing. I never wanted to be, I wanted my marriage to work. He wanted our marriage to work. We were serving in church. We were leaders in the areas, ministries God had given us. And we, of course, we had done our premarital counseling, the fantastic couple. We had done all the things in terms of preparing for marriage. Checked all the boxes. And I had made a personal decision that, you know what, if I'm doing this marriage thing, I'm the kind of person, if I'm doing anything, I am doing it well. I'd much rather not do it if I'm not going to do it excellently, because I don't want mediocre things. I want to do it to the end. And so I had made a decision that I am going to be the most supportive wife in life. Like literally, if there was going to be a book written,
Proverbs 31 women.
I'm Proverbs 32 even. So everything. So even some things which I'm seeing, this is not going well. I'm not asking questions. I'm not asking questions because this is a verse in Proverbs about nagging wives, about better to be in a house with dripping
educators. Exactly. And educators.
Better to be in a house with dripping water than to stay in the same room as a nagging woman or like there's so many verses about nagging wives, quarrelsome woman, and those kinds of things. Of course, I know the Bible, so I know about submitting to your husband and things like that. And so I am not speaking out against things. So for out of like, let's say 15 things that there's an issue, maybe I'll speak about one or two, which is a problem. Because when you are in marriage, you are growing together. You know, there's a verse before we come to wives submit to your husbands and husbands love your wives. Before that, there's a conversation about submit to one another out of reverence to Christ. And so it's not that the husband is here and the woman is here and whatever he says and she's just taking everything. It's that in mutual submission, because the Lord can speak to anyone, through anyone. And so being open and having the posture of, in as much as I'm seeing this, maybe it's not just me speaking. God can use me and the access point and the access and closeness that I have with my husband to be able to have him hear God through the things that I'm going to say.
Yeah. And I think it's very important that you mention that, because I think the lack of understanding of what submission means is what gets a lot of women in that place whereby you see something that's wrong, but instead of calling it out, you remain silent, you know, and calling something out. Yes. Calling something out is not submissive. It's not submission.
Or
it doesn't equate
or anything.
Yes, I think it's the how.
Yes.
How you deliver that message is what now differentiates between a nagging woman and a wise woman.
Exactly. But also looking back, I think, so there's the issue of I want to be the most supportive person in his whole life, because of course he has issues with his family and things like that. I want to be the voice of, I'm always on your side. I'm for you. Like when you think about ride or die, it's me. Like I am always, so there's this part where I'm really wanting you to know that I am supporting you in everything. But calling things out is not being unsupportive. You know, a good friend is one who can call you out on places where you're, you know, because Jesus talks about, the Bible talks about speaking the truth in love. You know, better rebuke, than 100 kisses.
That's Proverbs.
Proverbs again. So I think there was that dynamic. So I wasn't doing that. There was also this fear of marriage failing, because of course now, it has to be.
It has to work.
It has to work.
Come rain, come sunshine. Whatever I need to do.
It has to work. And so I'm working on those things which are informing, which are not bad things. Wanting your marriage to work is an excellent thing. Wanting to not being a nagging wife is an awesome thing. And wanting to your spouse to know that you're a partner and you're with them, you're on the same team, is an excellent thing. But if the motivation for those things is fear, is what will people think, is all these things, that's where the problem was. And I didn't know that I had those issues until afterwards. Now, after the end of all the things as well, I'm like, well, that was not healthy. That was not
anything
healthy.
That's being driven by fear.
Exactly.
It's not love.
It's not love. It's not love. And so I'm trying to do all these things. So even when, and I mean, of course, even when I shared in the very first episode, it took me so long even to speak about this because I didn't feel that the Lord had given me the liberty. But also it is not in any way for dishonor. It is really for people to be able to see and learn as the Lord convicts, as the Lord speaks, what they can pick and be like, oh, I see that in myself, I can change that. For example, an example I can give is situations where I could see, maybe, let's say you decide today you want to start this business or start this business. And then after a week or so, it's like, oh, no, I don't think it's the thing. So let me start something else or whatever it is. Me not being able to call out and say, yeah, but we have invested time and money in this one. Can we just see it through to the end? But being more like, okay, I'm thinking it, but I'm not saying it. I'm just like, oh, okay.
On to the
Let's try the next one. Oh, okay. So I'm thinking I'm being supportive, but I'm not being supportive.
In reality, you're building resentment. Unknowingly.
Exactly. And being an enabler of patterns that are not healthy. Because it's like, okay, if you can't figure this out, how about to take a step back? Maybe speak to somebody, or maybe let's just pick one thing. I mean, whatever it is, because it's having an implication on other things. One of the things that I was very determined, again, as somebody who was wanting this whole thing to work, was, I mean, I was getting promoted at work and things like that, but I was like, I will never throw this in this person's face, because I was just of the opinion that if God has provided, he's provided for us. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's coming through me, it's coming through you, whoever has the money. We have a joint account, we budget together, everybody has equal access to the money, everything is fine, you know, because sometimes there can be situations where now women go like, yeah, I'm not bringing the money.
Yeah, boss lady.
That was never me. That was never me, because see, me, my idea about marriage has come from God, and I want to partner with God for my marriage to work and whatever. So I was not going to do anything on my end that was going to sabotage. And I thought it was like, okay, that's a tick. At least that I did that one really well and whatever. But anyway, all these things I was doing were driven by fear and good intentions, bad motive, and then also not sustainable. So eventually, fast forward, we keep going these cycles. We have really happy times, and I mean, like, so it was not terrible. These are just the things I'm picking out just for in terms of indicators of where we are going. But things are good. We celebrate the season, different holidays together and whatever. At some point now, I need to come back to Kenya because I need to sort out my visa. And in all of that now, we end up transitioning back to Kenya. There's issues with visa for staying in SA, but the things you don't deal with are small things, little cracks, eventually become huge potholes and, you know, falling down of walls and things like that. Because fast forward a couple of years, by the time it got to 2017, when my daughter was born, towards the end of 2017, he needed to travel back home because he needed to sort out his paperwork. Not travel back home from Kenya. And that became the beginning of the end, the actual beginning of the end. And at some point in 2018, we start having conversations about, okay, now that we're at a distance, let's not even communicate as much as we were doing before, which makes no sense, because the farther apart you are, the more you need to communicate. But because people are dealing with their own things, everything else is just seeming like extra noise around. And so by beginning of 2019, I think it was even Valentine's Day of 2019, that's when we had a conversation about, okay, this thing is done. And I remember we were at a friend's birthday. I was with my sister, and she just turned to me and she was like, what are you going to do? As in, like, what does this mean? I was like, yeah, this is where we're at. And like, you don't ever think about it. Like, you started the episode with, nobody enters a marriage thinking they're going to end up divorced. There is a lot of love. There is a lot of history and good moments and peaks and things like that. But all the things that have not been dealt with at the beginning, unless there's active, I need to deal with this thing, or this is an issue, let's talk about it, or let's see somebody about it, let's talk, it will become worse. It will just grow, it will have a life of its own, and eventually it will reach a breaking point. And that's what happened in 2019. And so we started the process of separation, and all of that murkiness. I mean, of course, COVID came, and so it sort of stalled the process. But eventually, we completed the journey and got granted divorce. And then it was the issue about, okay, managing our own relationship. and then also plus the kids. And then, support for child support and things like that. But very, very heartbreaking, to be honest. I think that no matter how much things don't seem to be working, because you have the desire for this thing to work, and because you actually did love one another, you actually did get united, like God put you together and stuff like that, the breaking of that is extremely painful. I remember at the beginning I was just like, oh, okay, like I think I was just like in the clouds, like, what does this mean? Then eventually I just kept saying, okay, let's just jump on a call. Okay, let's start again. Like it just kept like, take me through it again from start, this and this and this and this, and this is where we are.
Did you guys try therapy? Did you know like how you're normally advised before you get to that point of that decision? What have you tried? Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Let's try again. Let's go back again.
I would say like that's the advice I usually give people. Like start with therapy. Like just start speaking to somebody. But both parties have to be willing to go for therapy. And because you can't force somebody to want to work on something that they don't want to work on. Because I kept thinking to myself, even before we got married, asking God, like, is this the person, and da-da-da, and feeling like God gave the go-ahead and stuff. And I remember later on, I think it must have taken maybe about a year, and I was processing these things mostly by myself and with God. And I mean, there's a journal that I had, which like going through my emotions, the grief, the anger, all these different things. And I just came to like, God, you mean like we can do all these things and it just doesn't work? Like, then what is the point of doing them with you? Like, what's the difference with doing them with you and doing it outside of you? Because if the outcome is the same, and God was like, well, with me, then you have the wisdom and you have the, inspiration to know what to do, to be sensitive to certain things that you might not see in the physical and all those different things. But one of the things that was one of my greatest lessons is how much God respects free will. Like God honors the thing that he has given us as human beings as free will. He will not override your free will. And marriage is two people choosing to be in this covenant together. God will not force you to stay there. He will, by his spirit, inspire you and help you to be able to honor the commitment that you've made. If you partner with him, he will change your heart. He will better help you to be a better spouse and to be able to serve and to do these things, to love your spouse. But you have to be willing to show up. It's the reason why somebody can be born again 30 years. But their behavior and character and everything is of somebody who have just gotten born again today. Because they have not partnered with the Holy Spirit. They've not allowed themselves to be transformed or to be changed or to be made over by God. And so, similar to even marriage, if you don't work, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. God is for marriages.
Both of you need to put in the work.
Exactly. God is for marriages. God's desire is that marriages work, that we are sanctified in the process, that it's his desire. I think it's the end of Malachi. He says he desires a godly heritage, a godly offspring. He wants that. He wants that beauty. He wants that love. He wants that people placed in families for them to experience and to know him. But the people who have been entrusted that assignment of marriage or that entity or that union need to be able to partner with him in order to build that marriage. And so there were conversations about, we should get therapy, but it was not shared conversations. It was not that we both want to do this thing. And so, exactly. And so that was an issue. There was like, okay, these people are praying, these ones are praying, but you're not going to pray over people. Like, if kuna free will. And so, unfortunately, there was no therapy. There was people speaking, but at the end of the day, it was, okay, that's the choice and that's the decision you've made. And so,
did the distance also perpetuate the whole making that permanence in the whole separation? And or distance was just a minute contribution?
I think it was a catalyst.
Okay.
It was a catalyst, but I think, to be honest, I think it was where it was always going. It's just that it just made it faster. It just came to that point faster. Because you see, when you're in close proximity, you can distract yourself with many things. There's things happening, there's events, we're going to attend this, we're going to do this, and so you're not actually dealing with the thing. When you're at a distance, now you have time to think and challenge things, because all the things that I was not doing before, like the challenging, asking questions, what about this, now I'm starting to do it, because I'm realizing, oh, there are things happening that I'm not happy about. Let me ask about them. Now you see those things are like more at the fore. And so so that was that was a whole situation. I mean, and then also the fact that with all these things, marriage it's such an intimate process, and it's just between the two of you. And so not being able to come out and be like on a microphone, guys, this is what has happened, and this and this and this and this. Now also the consequences or the aftermath of the divorce, the single parenting, the pain, and the people's judgment and people's ideas about this and the other. Needing to walk through that means the grief of the moment. There's the grieving of the marriage and this feeling like the death, a part of you has died, and a version of you has also died.
Divorce or end of marriage is like death.
It is painful. It is horrible. I remember the day when the judgment was made by the judge. I cried so much. I was a friend of mine, and I literally cried so much, like sobbing, crying, like inside, like my heart is like coming out of my chest, crying, because it is painful. It is immensely painful. So there's that part, and then there's everything else you have to deal with. There's all things that come up every single time something happens, whether it is showing up at school, whether it is questions that the kids are asked or that they ask, or just things like that. I mean, there's so many dynamics of pain, of hardship, of difficulty because of all of that. That is, that I would not wish on anyone, that I would rather people spend a lot more time dating or in therapy or asking people questions before making that decision to get married. And then once inside there, doing whatever it takes to be able to show up and do the work and identify in yourself things that you need to be able to fix, because all of us, nobody is unscarred by life, but we need to be able to figure out what those things are. How can I get help so that this does not pass on to the person I love or to my children or to the people around me, and also helping the other person do the same, so that it can work, because I do believe that marriage works and marriage can work, and God's desire is for it to work. But that is, I've tried to, I really hope it's I've tried to package it as tastefully as possible. But also not shrink back from, I guess, pointing out things that maybe could have been done differently, or
which was gonna be my next question in terms of for you yourself. Do you feel like there were things that maybe you would have done better, or just the lessons looking back and reflecting, what are some of the key important lessons, and quite a number of them, you've mentioned just in between your story, but are there specific ones that really stand out when you reflect and look back at your failed marriage that you'd love to pass on to someone who is yet contemplating on making that decision for marriage, is perhaps scared about this whole marriage institution because of the stories of many failed marriage? What are some of the lessons that you've gleaned from your failed marriage?
Wow. Number one, don't rush to get married. In terms of, if there are things that can be worked on before you get married, let them be worked on. Like, there is no race that you're in terms of like, if somebody's still trying to figure themselves out, let them figure themselves out, or figure out,
especially when they're a red flag or there are things that you're not ready to deal with.
Exactly. If somebody has a character issue, or somebody has identity, or that kind of thing, I think give them time to grow. Sometimes I think we feel like I have to get married now, like this is the time, it's the season of getting married, and what if I miss my window, of getting married? What if this person decides to marry somebody else? As they say, better a failed engagement than a failed marriage. And so I think take your time. If there is anything that concerns you before you get married, let the person, and maybe it's even you, you work on it before you get married. That's definitely number one. Number two, love the person you're with enough to call out things. I think that love is not, the Bible says love covers a multitude of sin, but it's not in that way. Sometimes people are just like, no, you can't keep bringing up. Yeah, no, that's a different context. The love covers a multitude of sin in that context of 1 Corinthians 13 is more about that we are able, if you bring it out, we are able to deal with it in this place of love and dealing with the particular situation. It's not that tunafunika, like we're turning the other way. You're sinning, we're turning the other way. If somebody is perpetually cheating on you, that's not the place to cover a multitude of sin. That's an issue. Like you need to call it out. People who are disrespectful to their family or parents, people who are not able to be loyal, people who are not able to stick out or be resilient in things. How are they going to stick it out with you in marriage if they can't stick it out? A bit of discomfort at work, a bit of discomfort here and there, and many other, I guess more serious things. But if you're not in a relationship where you can call things out, in your spouse, so they can call things out in you or you as the person who they're dating, that's an issue. Yeah. So be able to have those honest and hard conversations that don't end up in everybody yelling, abuse of whatever kind. You can disagree. You can have some times of like, let's not talk for the next 2 hours, but then we're going to come back to it and we're going to deal with it. If you're not in a relationship where you can have that authentically, that's a problem. I think that's something that I could have done differently beforehand. And even in the marriage, I think that if I had been doing that from the beginning, I think things could have gone a different way, possibly. I think something else I would say is therapy. Therapy or counseling. Very important.
Embrace it.
Yes, embrace therapy and counseling. And with that, I also would add working with other people. There are many things that eventually, like now towards the end when the marriage was ending, like people around me were shocked. Like, wait, what?
I thought you guys were happy.
Yeah, like
you
what?
had all things
that's
going
something
on.
that's
Great
unacceptable.
for you
You shouldn't even have
guys.
done. Yeah, but you see, it was more like we're dealing with just us two. It's just us two. And I don't advocate, obviously, we're not going to put a status update, an Instagram post every single time you have a disagreement with your husband. Trisha, I would not advise.
Yeah.
I would not advise that.
Yeah.
But having people that you're journeying with, it's not enough to have premarital counseling. Regularly check in with a couple that you both trust, or pastors or counselors or therapists, whatever it is. You cannot do your marriage journey by yourselves. There are many things people could have seen from outside and told us beforehand. Hey, guys, this one, you see, like here, what you're doing, that's not going to work. Or people who would have been able to help and rescue so much earlier on. I think that's a major one, because many people are suffering in their marriages by themselves.
Silently.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you're hearing this one has killed the other one, this one has done this, or this one has automatically now just disappeared to another country. But it's because you're not actually dealing with the issues, the issues that are there, and nobody's being able to speak into it, because at some point, of course, in marriage you're like equal. So if you say I can choose to ignore, but if 2 or 3 other people that we're journeying with are saying, yeah, but Trisha,
you can't ignore
this. But Trisha, there's this and this and this, you'll be like, oh, okay, maybe I do have an issue and I do need to change this. I think so. Those are my top ones.
And I think I was gonna say I'm also a big advocate of, you don't have to wait for things to be wrong for you to go to therapy.
Exactly.
Therapy is just, it's healthy at whatever point of your marriage. When things are going on great, you know, actually, apparently, I don't know if it's a statistics or there's somewhere I read that majority of, I don't know whether it's men or married couples, they cheat when they're at their peak. When everything seems perfect in their marriage, everything is going well.
So it's not even when things are going bad.
Not necessarily when things are going bad, you know. So I think for me, I always say therapy is, it's a health check, you know. It's one of those things that you check in terms of a random checkup, you know, how is our marriage doing? What, you know, somebody from outside, can they pick on something that perhaps you're missing, as you have said?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, just I think make it as a priority even before you get married. Just decide that, you know what, every 2 months or once a month, we're just gonna go and
embrace therapy. There's nothing wrong. If not therapy, at least have people in your inner circle that you get to open your life to, and you get to have deeper, meaningful conversation. It may not necessarily be a therapist, like a professional counselor, but then a friend who's able to walk you through and unpack certain things in your life and be able to point you and call out certain things that you may not be able to see.
Definitely. I think those would be my top. Are those 3 or 4? Yeah, those would be the things that I'd say could definitely have been done differently. I don't know if the outcome would have been different, but they would have given us, I think, a better chance at success. Yeah.
Okay, I love that. So, I wanted to go into dating, but before we go into dating, you know, you've talked about now the whole separation and the repercussions of now raising your children. How's that journey been like, and what has been your anchoring truth that you've held on to through this process? Because I know, you know, even some of our viewers today could be, you know, in that place whereby they're struggling as single mothers. You know, they've probably separated with their husbands. So, what has been some of the anchoring truth that you've held on to that have helped you?
Oh wow, that's such a good question. Oh, it's so deep. I think one major one for me has been the scriptures that talk about, I think it's in Isaiah, talk about God being husband to the, you know, widow or husbandless and father to the fatherless. You know, I genuinely have internalized that, and many times when something happens or I'm struggling with something, I'm like, God, these are your children. God, these are your children. Hello. There's an issue with your kids. And just really, really believing that in my heart, that God has said, He has said that people who don't have fathers, He will be their father. People who don't have husbands, He will be their husband. And genuinely being so, like, I have made it such a part of me. Like, I could be driving and something happens with the car. I'm just like, God, now who am I going to call? Who am I going to, God, please, I need you to fix this. And then maybe I'll remember somebody and I'll call somebody, or somebody will come and help, or something like that. And of course, not to mean like every time it's just like instant like this, but that has been something that has really comforted me. Just being able to be like, God has said, and I believe Him, and I believe that He is not going to just leave me. He's not going to just abandon me. That has really been a place of anchoring. The other one is also one of the questions that I had, one of the things that really broke my heart was thinking that, God, there's so many things that already are against children in this generation. This thing happening is introducing father wounds to my children. Like, God, like, this is horrible. And I mean, you see around, I mean, in psychology and even just in society, you see people with father wounds and what that plays out in their lives. And I said, God, you're going to have to fix this thing or heal this thing. I am so unable to be able to, I can't be mother and father. I'm just a mom. I'm female. That's really all that I am and all that I have. I'm going to need you to make up that difference, God. I'm just going to need you to fix that. And God has been so gracious in regards to like the men in my life, whether it's like my brother-in-law, it's my cousins, it's a few like male friends that I have who have been such good friends, have been such good male figures and father figures to my children. They have such good friendships. They have places they can go to in terms of speaking about things that I wouldn't know, or even just having a different voice, you know, so that they're not just having me as their be all end all, but also having those places where I can trust my children with these people. Whether it's my son, he needs to discuss this, like when they were going for the cut. So my brother-in-law was like, okay, we're taking them now. I was like, wait, what? And so my son and my nephew were taken by my brother-in-law, and they went through that process, and my son is always able to ask him questions, and even with family, friends, with different people. God has really been so gracious in providing those people. And I mean, I just don't take it for granted, because there's so many people who are just in this bubble, and then all manner of different things come up. And not to say that it's all perfect, but I am so, so grateful for every single man that God has brought my way who has been a friend to my children. You know, of course, as a mom also, you're just like safeguarding, like, ooh, I don't want this. But for the most part, it has been positive. It has been life-giving. It has been awesome. And I think God has been so kind and gracious with that. That's a huge one, because other times I'm just like, Lord, honestly, like this would be so much easier if there was somebody else partnering and giving and being able to walk with in all of this, but being the one to think about this and this and the other. I also went back to school, so also thinking about my own fees, and there's also entertainment, because they're children, they need to do children-y things. So all of that, God has been so kind. I mean, I can't even say the number of times people have just either taken them to have fun things, or just taken them for weeks on end. Like my kids are coming back today after being away for 3 weeks. for the holiday.
Wow.
And they're fine and they're happy and they're safe. Fees being paid, or just miracles with work, and so money comes, and just not feeling like I am lacking, or even the gift. I think I was discussing with my mom the gift that God has given me in having children, and I'm not showing off, guys, but children who are brilliant. Like, so even in times, I think there's been times, maybe I think I'll count 2 or 3 times where they've gone to school late because I haven't done the fees, or like the first fees installment, and they go to school, and within 2 weeks they have caught up and surpassed people who have been in school for like a whole month. And I'm like, it's not something even for flexing, it's more that God making up the difference, you know, like pursuing and overtaking. And I'm just like, those are the small mercies and graces that God has given me. And so I rarely ever think of myself as a single mom. But the interesting, sometimes I'm just like, yeah, let's just pray for the single moms, and then I'm like, oh wait, I think I'm in that category. I just think about myself as I'm Angie, and there are these kids who are in my house that I'm raising, and I'm partnering with God to raise them.
Love that.
And He's just been so gracious. But just knowing that I can talk to Him at any point in time, and that He has already claimed the children as His own. That's something that is sort of has been such a good undergirding over the last couple of years.
I love that. What an encouragement for any mom who is wondering, how do I pick myself up from here? You know, with all these kids, no husband, no man. But there's God.
And there's God. He's so real and so present and so awesome.
All right. So now tell us about the whole dating and but at what point did you feel, because I mean we mentioned divorce not being a light-hearted thing, it's something that is very deep, it's core, there's healing, it's a whole journey and a process. At what point did you feel like, now I feel like I have recovered from my divorce and now I'm ready to go back to the soko. Yes, I'm ready to go back to the market. I'm open to dating again. My perception about marriage has completely been transformed, and I'm open to embracing it again. How was that journey been?
Well, to be honest, after the divorce happened, and the separation, and then eventually divorce, I didn't think about dating again. Like it was just like, okay, let me just figure out my own life. Let me figure out my kids. I poured myself into my work, and not because I was running away from things, but like it was just not, it was such a non-issue. Like it just automatically just became like a whatever. I'd go to places maybe for meetings and whatever. I'd interact with people, and even though they were really nice, and maybe they were seeking something else, I was just, when you're just so oblivious, I'm just very nice, somebody's calling me late at night, or what are you doing? Oh, I'm just going to bed. Okay, good night. I was just so out of, just not even thinking about it, and not even thinking about dating or any of that, up until we're in 2024 now, so 2022, and so this is a couple of years later, maybe like 4 years later, and I am there, and I'm not feeling longing. Like I can be hanging around couples and I'm just like, I'm happy for them. But there's literally not even a tinge of, oh, that's so cute, I would like that. Nothing. Zero. In fact, there's a couple of my friends and even one of my cousins who's having issues in their marriage. I'm the one who's the counselor. I'm giving people instruction about what they need to do. I'm helping them. I'm I'm checking it. I'm the one I'm counseling people with their marriages and things like that. Have no anything about that. It come, I think, about end March or April 2022. And I am part of this international ministry. I am serving, and we have an online Bible study. And I interact with this guy. He's from the Caribbean. But we're just talking as friends and da-da-da-da. Eventually, at some point, now we're talking in the group, but then eventually we start talking like separately. And eventually, I think at some point he even says that he loves me. And I was like, okay, thank you. Gotta go. Hang up. Yeah, I'm that kind of person. You will not force me to tell you I love you. You will not. But over a couple of months, he just says these are things that God is showing him and saying to him. I'm like, that's so good for you. That is amazing. Like, I'm so happy that we're friends. We're spending a lot of time together, like online and stuff like that. But I am not feeling anything. I'm just
nothing. Not there.
I am a rock, pretty much. Then comes, I think, July, August 2022, and I go for this Kesha. And was it the Kesha? It was before the Kesha. Yeah, I go for this Kesha. And in that Kesha, I sort of feel like God melts my heart. I can't even explain. Guys, some of these things with God, you can't even really say exactly. But you just feel, exactly. You just feel like, I feel new. I think that's probably what happened. There's a story in when Saul is about to become king. He goes and meets the prophet Samuel, and he says, "You're going to be king." And Saul is like, "I don't even know." He says, "As soon as you'll go and meet these prophets, and your heart will be changed." But the Bible describes, as soon as Saul left Samuel, his heart was changed. His heart was like he got a new heart. There was a shift, and it's sort of like it's an out of body experience because you're like, wait, I feel different, but nothing has happened. Like, I don't know why. So then I softened up, and then next thing, we were dating, because I was like, okay, guess what? I have something to tell you. He's like, what? Because at this point now, it's been a couple of months, and he just knows him is just showing up because God is telling him to be this person and whatever. So I tell him, and he's like, wait, what? He even tells his whole family. That can you imagine that Angela said, and so, nice and raspy Caribbean accent. And so, we were on this relationship journey. And I think at the end of 2022, I think I was on a podcast. And for the first time I said, guys, I think I'm in love. My sister almost fainted. She almost fainted because she's like, in my whole life, I have never had Angie say that she's in love and blah, 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 blah. But it was nice. It was a beautiful sort of journey in regards to like my heart opening up again, like, and feeling like, there's this part of me. Because I was just so okay with everything else, things are moving, ministry and whatever. But I was just, that part was just closed out. Like, it was not even a thing. And my heart opening up. Unfortunately, in 2023, I think it was around about March, that relationship ended. And the reason it ended is because I saw certain things. And am I slow to learn? I am not. I am not. I am, it's like, Lord, you don't have to teach me twice. And I started asking some questions, and it was sort of like, there was quite a bit of like gaslighting and whatever. I was like, no, this and this. And I think there's nothing worse than somebody playing with your mind, because it's sort of, you can actually make you feel like you're crazy, but you're like, no, I know that this and this and this has happened, and this is what is being presented, but it's not true and whatever. And I just had to say, you know what, if you're not going to tell me the truth, I'm going to have to step away from this engagement. And so took a break and then reconnected a bit later in the year, but still it was sort of like, we can reconnect as friends, but until this major thing is dealt with and addressed, I am not willing to continue on this journey of relationship, because I understand how costly it is. I have walked that path. It is painful. It is costly. I will not willingly walk myself into it again. And I am not at this place where I'm so desperate for a relationship, so desperate for love, that I will take whatever it is. Because sometimes, unfortunately, that's what happens when you have been bitten and, there's this whole, you're in a bad place. Anybody coming along, it's like they're doing you a favor.
I think also for a lot of women, it's always like, anyway, after all, it's hard to find a man who will love me with my children. I already have 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids. God forbid. So finding a man, so you take
the pit of hell.
I know. Please. You end up taking in any man who shows you attention and small affection.
Exactly. Small sprinkles of affection.
Breadcrumbs.
No, because our value is not in any way defined by anything we have been through, gone through. No. If it was up to that, none of us would make it. None of us would qualify. But our value has been imputed to us because of what Jesus has done. Even when I tell people, I was for the last couple of years, I've been teaching a course on dignity. It's dignity, and telling people, even before coming to Christ, every single human being has value because we've been made in the image and likeness of God. That's it. That's it. Just because you have been made in the image and likeness of God, you have value. And then on top of that, you're a Christian, a born again Christian, where Christ has died for you and you've received that sacrifice. I beg, nobody should ever make you feel like they're doing you a favor, because what? You are such a treasure, such a gift. And so that's sort of like the last like officially relationship that I started, ended, and whatever. But I am I'm in the process.
You're seeing somebody.
I am. I
Oh,
am
you're
being
talking
seen.
stage.
I am talking. And continuing to talk. And
Talking
let's
and
see.
praying.
Talking and praying. Talking and praying.
Okay.
But it's good. It's
Yeah,
nice. It's nice to have these giddy feelings and all the things.
Yeah.
And I think it's sort of like just being wiser. It's nice to be wiser and to be able to choose and know this is acceptable. This is not. So you can't talk to me like that. Also, no, I'm not going to. Hey, by the way, you're not doing me a favor. And things like that. Just being able to have those nice adult, still lovey-dovey, but also with
tough conversations.
Exactly. Boundaries and like, that's not working for me and I can't.
I love to see it. Hey, none of the glow.
This glow is just Jesus. It's just Jesus and shea butter. Usually it's water, but I've not been drinking water, so it's Jesus and shea butter is the source for this glow.
Yeah, Angie. But I love that. Just the fact that it's a source of hope for people, like ladies or even men, who've gone through separation or divorce, to know that there's actually hope. You can find another godly relationship, or you can find somebody else who will find you attractive, who will love you fully as you are, with everything that you carry. You will not be discredited because of your past, or whether you have children or not. But that our key foundation, I love what you said, the basis of being loved is just Christ. The fact that our identity is found in Christ, and everything that we desire in this life can only come from God, and not anything that we've done or will ever do to receive or get love.
And I think that what's important, whether we're talking about divorce, separation, and broken relationships and stuff like that, is also to be able to not allow society and not allow ourselves even and the voice of the enemy to put shame on us. And so many people make wrong decisions afterwards because that shame has become part of their identity. It's a horrible thing to go through a divorce. It is painful. It is hard. It's all those things.
And especially as a Christian, already there's a lot of baggage.
As
Divorce,
a Christian,
biblically.
as a Christian minister, as a Christian leader, as a firstborn in my family,
so everyone puts a label
as a public figure, all these different things. There's so many places shame can come to you, or can come and be attached to you, but it is a lie from the kingdom of darkness. Like Jesus Christ, this Bible talks about, I think it's Paul who is writing that when he went to the cross, that he took every accusation, every writing, and it was nailed to the cross. He ripped up every accusation against us. And that includes divorce, includes separation, includes broken marriages and broken hopes and dreams, whatever it is. Because some people, the source of shame can be because you were fired. You thought you were doing so well in your career and now you've been fired. And some people end up even killing themselves or end up in such a dark space because this thing that they attached their identity to so much has fallen apart. And honestly, there is no other place that we can get anchoring other than God. Some people make marriage their idol, and so when it falls apart, like for me personally, like I felt very shattered. I was like, God, but I am this and I'm this and this. I've done all the things, and God said to me, give me the broken pieces. Yes, it's broken. You have to accept it's broken. Like pick up the broken pieces, just give them to me. He also told me things about, in my marriage, I was sort of trying to be like a deputy savior. And so some of the things that I was not calling out was because I was trying to save the situation, save the marriage, save this person, whatever it was. It's like, there's only one savior, and it's me, not you. You can't add to anything that I did on the cross. It is only me. And so being able to take those broken pieces and take them to God, not trying to act like they're not broken, because there's also that. You can just be pretending there that everything's just fine, everything's okay, everything's awesome, but they're not awesome. Take those broken pieces to God and let him give you right perspective about that brokenness. Because it's not you. You're not the problem. It's that situation that's broken. Let God speak into that. Let God speak life back to you. The places that dead. Let God heal you. Let God give you right perspective. Let God make you whole. And so that thing, yes, I can say confidently that I was once recently in a conversation, it was the beginning of February, and I said, I was introducing myself and I said, and this is me, And I said, I had the privilege of participating or partaking in the sacrament of marriage, because it's so nice, sacrament of marriage. But unfortunately, it broke. It did not work out. And, going into all that detail. but that is not me. I am not this brokenness. I am not this failure. I am not all of that. All this baggage and all this pain and all this brokenness, I take it to Christ. The same way I took my sins to him, for him to forgive me, the same way I take all my burdens and I cast them to him because he cares for me, as First Peter says. Even that I take to him, and I receive his love, I receive his acceptance, his forgiveness, his right perspective, and I'm able to show up again whole and available to be used by him, and to be able to show up to be light in the world. So the lie that you should walk around with shame, God is the lifter of our heads. The lie that you are broken and damaged goods, it's a lie from the pit of hell. We are whole in Christ. He makes all things new. All things. When we come to him, we're new creations. And not just spiritually, but every part of us. He's in the process of redeeming all things to himself, reconciling all things to himself, even the broken parts of our lives. And so don't walk around with the shame. Don't walk around with the guilt. If, yes, you are the person who has caused the brokenness, ask for forgiveness from God. Ask for forgiveness from the other party if you're able to. Seek reconciliation. If that is not possible, ask God to help you in this newness. But shame and guilt, we reject them. Because in the same way that fear was a bad motivator to do certain things, shame and guilt are also very bad motivators for you to, I'm going to start a podcast now. But it's out of shame. It's because you want to be the first one to break the story.
Or you enter into depression. It's one or the other.
Yeah, or guilt and all these things. And they become the motivator for you to do things that look good outside, but they can't hold because they're not from the place of healing and wholeness and what God has said. But
love that.
Yeah, like let God lift anybody who is watching. If you're in a broken marriage, a broken relationship, or whatever the situation is that looks like this is devastating, it will cause me embarrassment or whatever it is, take it to God. It is not your identity. Your identity is that you're a child of God, beloved, chosen before the foundations of the earth. Before you knew Christ, he loved you and died for you. God has a great plan and a purpose and a future for you and your children and the people around you. And it is not over. It is not over. As long as you have breath, I beg you, this could be the beginning of the best of the rest of your life, the rest better part of your life even. I don't know. Yeah.
Wow, what a way to learn this conversation. Angie, you have preached like 10 elders. No, that was really amazing. Actually, let us say 10, the 12 elders. You've literally preached like the 12 elders, you know. And not 12 times 2. 24.
12 on one side, 12 on one side.
24, the 24 elders. But thank you so much. What a way to learn this conversation. And I think on that note, it's important for me to mention that we are planning a live experience of the 360 Perspective podcast. We'll be sharing more details about that. But the topic will be about redefining success and failure, because just as we have shared on this podcast, a lot of us carry that, labels of shame, of guilt, of failure, just based off on our past. And that's part of the conversation that we'll be having in our upcoming live experience. So stay tuned. We'll be sharing more details on that. But thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. I really do hope that you have been challenged on different levels. Your perspective has been challenged. You've been inspired. And hopefully, it's triggering some of the changes that you need to make in your life. And would you go ahead and share with us in the chat comment section anything that you've gleaned on or learned from today's episode? Would love to read and then just get to know what are some of the things that you are learning. But thank you so much. Do subscribe to this channel if you haven't, and remember to share this episode.
Bye.